So, welcome to LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I've got about 30 clips on several topics for what I think should be a great show tonight. As always, this is my weekly broadcast of the best clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the corporate media here in the United States, along with a little political comedy and along with my commentary between the clips. And hopefully I'll get some comments from the live viewer audience during the show that I can turn into a little live discussion at the end. As usual, I'll be using clips from the Sunday morning news shows on the regular Big Five outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, plus some quasi-news clips from last night's Saturday Night Live on NBC and Friday's Real Time with Bill Maher on HBO. I'll get to several topics before the end, including Obamacare, Chris Christie's Bridgegate scandal, and the Hobby Lobby contraception case that was at the Supreme Court last week. But the two main topics I'm covering first are President Obama's new proposal about NSA phone record collection, which I'll cover after several clips on the continuing conflict with Russia. There's actually been a little diplomatic movement in the Russia situation in the last few days, starting with a phone call between Vladimir Putin and President Barack Obama last Friday that Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update covered last night, kind of like this.
Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday called President Obama to discuss a solution to the crisis in Ukraine, and both agreed to a meeting of their top diplomats. Then Obama nearly botched it by accidentally ending the phone call with "Love you, bye."
So I guess that Republican narrative about President Obama being in a weak position relative to Vladimir Putin has definitely seeped into the popular culture when it's the premise of the punchline of the first joke on Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update. But over on CNN's State of the Union, Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein seemed to think that the phone call between President Obama and Vladimir Putin was a good thing, though she was definitely worried about Russian troops on the border of Ukraine. As you can see from Senator Feinstein's answer to CNN anchor Candy Crowley's question over in this clip.
See the intelligence. What do you think they're doing along the border?
Well, I have seen that intelligence. I can't tell you what it is, but I can give you my view of what I've seen. There's no question that there are 40+ thousand troops, that they are staged in various areas, that to people who watch this, it looks like an invasion force. Putin has said it's an exercise, so that leaves a big question mark. I think what gives me a sense that we may be able to solve this situation is the fact that Putin did call our president, and suggestions were made, and there will be a meeting this week between the Foreign Minister Lavrov of Russia and our Secretary of State, Kerry, and there may well be the ability to solve this. I'm a student in college of Russian history. Any student of Russian history knows how important the Crimea was and is to Russia. Khrushchev gave the Crimea, ceded the Crimea, essentially to Russia in 1954. He did it for, I think, reasons of interest to Russia. The Crimea is dominantly Russian. A referendum was passed. That, I think, has been done. But Ukraine is a different subject.
So to you, okay, you get the Crimea thing.
I get the Crimea thing. But the Ukrainian situation is very, very different. And I have deep concern. I have a deep persuasive hope that Russia will find, as has been termed, an off-ramp and not go ahead with this, and that diplomacy is able to make up for it. There are many good things that Russia's going to gain in trade. I mean, one of them is the signing of an agreement for a gas line in May with China. Now, whether this happens or not becomes questionable because the Chinese have long been concerned about Russian aggression on another border. So this is a big issue that needs solution.
Now, that was an interesting point at the end there about China possibly punishing Russia for annexing Crimea, which I hadn't heard anywhere else. But Senator Feinstein always seemed there to pretty much take for granted that Crimea is going to remain part of Russia. And in contrast, I noticed over on Fox News, supposedly straight news host Chris Wallace didn't even seem to think that Russia taking Crimea but going no further was one of the possibilities, which seemed to be what Dianne Feinstein was hoping for. And instead, he kind of gave this false choice to his guest Republican Congressman Mike Rogers, who's the chair of the House Intelligence Committee. In the question and answer you can see over in this clip.
Let's start with Putin's phone call with President Obama. While the White House portrays this as Putin discussing pursuing a diplomatic resolution, the Kremlin says that he called to talk about extremists threatening ethnic Russians in Ukraine. What is your best analysis, given particularly the buildup of Russian troops along the border with Ukraine? What's your analysis? Is Putin looking for a way out or simply setting the stage for another invasion?
He is absolutely not looking for a way out. So you have two environments going on at the same time, Chris. You have the Ukraine issue and you have the Georgia issue. So they're moving some of their most advanced equipment into South Ossetia. No reason to do that. The Georgian army really poses no threat. That's certainly concerning. And then you see all of the Russian movement along the border, and you see Russian covert influence operations, meaning they have their intelligence officials and their special forces inside Ukraine trying to foment this notion that the Russians should come in. There is no way that I would take that as any other sign other than he is looking for a way to find his land bridge from Crimea to Transnistria along the northern Baltic Sea area, which is right along the Moldova and Ukraine border.
So when you say you see no other explanation, are you saying you think he's going to move into eastern Ukraine?
I wouldn't see that he would go into eastern Ukraine. If I looked at it today, and nobody really knows, they don't know what his intentions are, other than you can gauge by history and what his actions are today. He really, if he was going to protect Crimea from a military perspective, there's a water source that's several hundred kilometers north of Crimea, and he needs a land bridge to connect Crimea and the Transnistria area that's already said it wanted to be part of the Russian Federation. That's right along the top of the Baltic Sea area. So if I were looking at this and going to lay down some stakes of where he was going, that's exactly what I would think he would do. He would do that first, the southern part, and then he would continue his covert influence campaign in the east of Ukraine. And unfortunately, there's just not a lot that can happen. I mean, the United States said we were going to give MREs. I think they're finally getting here this weekend, but it's taken us weeks just to get food to the folks who are saying they want to stand up to Russian aggression in the east of Ukraine.
So, yeah, that was an interesting analysis from Republican Mike Rogers, chair of the House Intelligence Committee. One presumes he has a lot of information at his disposal as the Republican chair of the House Intelligence Committee. And if you don't know the places he was talking about, I actually saw a Washington Post article that had a good map. I put a link down in the video description where you can look at the whole article. For some reason my map is not showing up here. It's like, I don't know why. Now let me see if I can import this really quick here, but it seems to be like it's... I wanted to show you this map of the places he was talking about there, but somehow it seems to have disappeared, or it's... See, it's showing up for me here, but let me see if I can export it to another format so that maybe it will work. I'll put it over in like a TIFF format. Let's see if I can import that here. Okay, sorry about that, but I think this map is worth it here. You can see that Transnistria that he was talking about there is... see, I don't know exactly how the troops over in Russia can get over to Transnistria there, but I can understand what he's talking about in South Ossetia and those areas in Georgia. But anyway, that seems to be what Mike Rogers was talking about there, and I apologize that I didn't have that map working right away. But it seemed over on Fox News that sort of the false choice that Chris Wallace was posing for Mike Rogers there at the beginning was either Vladimir Putin is going to pull back from Crimea or he's going to go further, when actually what's probably the most likely outcome is that he's going to keep Crimea but go no further. And I want to show former ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, who was over on NBC's Meet the Press with Chuck Todd, who was substituting for David Gregory as the host, and he talked about how he thinks that Crimea is now part of that a Russian Crimea is part of the status quo. I'll show you that and talk about it a little more after I show you here.
To happen in Paris. What do you make of the two different readouts of the call? President Obama made it seem as if, hey, the diplomatic solution is possible. Putin's readout starts bringing up Moldova and starts talking about possibly new interventions.
Well, that's exactly the point. I mean, it depends on what solution you're talking about and what negotiation you want. I think if you look at it from the Russian perspective, the readout and other things that have been said, they're pivoting. They're changing the subject. They're saying, okay, Crimea's done. We've taken that. Now let's start negotiating about the Ukrainian constitution. Let's start negotiating about the autonomy of places like Donetsk. And as President Kennedy said very famously during the Berlin crisis, he was not going to negotiate about the freedom of Berlin under the guise of what's mine is mine and what's yours is negotiable. This feels a little bit like that. They're changing the subject to talk about what they want, not what we want to talk about.
And I think what Ambassador or former Ambassador Michael McFaul was saying there is probably true. He was the ambassador to Russia until last month, and if you want to see good confirmation, check out the ambassador from Russia to the United States. I believe his name is Sergey. Let me make sure I get his name right here. Sergey Kislyak. He was over on This Week with George Stephanopoulos and was interviewed by George Stephanopoulos. And he basically, when George Stephanopoulos asked him if he was gonna, or if Russia was gonna withdraw troops from Crimea, his answer was basically, why should we withdraw troops from Crimea? It's part of Russia, as you can see over in this clip.
Thank you for joining us. The United States is making it very clear that any diplomatic solution must include a pullback of Russian troops from Crimea. Is Russia prepared to meet that condition?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Secondly, what kind of pullback from Crimea are you talking about? We are now in the territory of Russian Federation because there are a lot of things that have happened, and one has to be very realistic about it. There was an expressed will of people living in Crimea to become a part of Russian Federation at the moment when there was an unconstitutional takeover of power with the use of force in Kiev. And they felt that this is a moment that is threatening the way of the life they wanted to conduct. So Crimea is a part of Russian Federation, and
How about Eastern?
So yeah, you can see the Russian ambassador to the United States is basically saying, well, we can't withdraw our troops from Crimea because Crimea is part of Russia now. And the other kind of news that happened in this last week about the Russia versus United States conflict over Ukraine is when President Obama was at a news conference over in Europe. He was asked about what Russia was doing, and especially in the context, he was asked about it in the context of that debate with Mitt Romney during the presidential campaign, where he basically mocked Mitt Romney for saying Russia was our #1 enemy, and now does he feel that that was wrong? And he didn't say that he felt that he was wrong during the campaign. Instead, he said that Russia is just a regional power that can threaten its immediate neighbors, and so he was kind of like denigrating Russia compared to, you know, the United States as the sole remaining superpower, or at least a great power, but he wasn't calling Russia a great power. And so over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, Stephanopoulos asked the Russian ambassador to the United States, Sergey Kislyak, to respond to what President Obama said about Russia being a regional power, and I'll show you that clip over here.
Heard President Obama label Russia a regional power acting out of weakness. Your response?
Well, if you consider Russia a regional power, look at the region that we are in. It's from Europe to Asia. It's quite a significant region in the first place. Secondly, I think that those categorizations are very artificial. We're a country with a lot of interest and a lot of things that we can contribute to throughout the world, but we certainly are not going to overstretch anyway.
Will there be...
Yeah, I kind of like that answer, that if Russia's a regional power, its region is Europe and Asia, and that's a pretty big region. So I guess there's some truth to that. And the other thing that President Obama did in his news conference in Europe regarding the Russian situation is he answered a question about whether the Russian invasion of Ukraine or Crimea was analogous to what the United States did in Iraq, and he, you know, gave this big statement how it was different. And I kind of like the way that Bill Maher over on HBO's Real Time on Friday night addressed that in his monologue. I'll show you that clip here.
No, they kicked them out because, you know, Putin invaded Crimea, and Obama made a big speech. He said, this is no way comparable to when we invaded Iraq. And he's right. Putin invading Crimea is nothing like us invading Iraq. First of all, it worked. Right there.
I don't know. Actually, I'm not sure whether Putin's invasion of Crimea has worked. I mean, right now he's in the mission accomplished stage, and I mean, it could actually work if he stops with Crimea. One of the clips I'm not showing is I heard some people talking about how if Russia did go into the rest of Ukraine, they might end up with having to deal with insurgents, you know, the Tatars and some other people in the Ukraine. I mean, the Tatars are already in Crimea, are possibly going to declare their own little jihad on the Russians from what I've seen from some sources, but I don't know how accurate that is. Anyway, those are the clips on what's happening in Russia and Ukraine and Crimea that I want to show you this morning, from this morning. And I also have about the same number of clips I want to show you on the latest NSA spying story, because when President Obama was in Europe, he also announced at one of those news conferences that he is going to change the NSA's bulk phone record collection program. That's the program that keeps 5 years worth of metadata from phone calls, which is not the content of the phone calls, but it's who's on both ends, you know, what number is called, from what number, at what time, you know, the locations, length of the call. Anyway, so he's going to change all that, and I want to show several clips on that. First, here's Chuck Todd. I think the first clip is, Chuck Todd is over on, was hosting NBC's Meet the Press, and he had Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon, who was one of the Democratic senators who's been trying to limit NSA spying for even well before the Edward Snowden leaks. And so he asked, Chuck Todd asked Ron Wyden to react to President Obama's proposal, and I'll talk about it a little more after I show that clip here.
Quickly, we go through the president's basic reforms with bullet points here. No more. Bulk phone records will remain at the phone companies. NSA will no longer collect and hold these records, and unless an emergency, officials must obtain a court order. Is this enough to win the credibility back of the American people?
This starts towards what Ben Franklin had in mind, which is making sure that we can have security without sacrificing our liberties. Now, there's certainly more to do. For example, I believe the president ought to make the transition right away to ending bulk phone records.
So he shouldn't have. On Thursday, he signed another court order approving the bulk collection for another 90 days while you guys decide. I know Patrick Leahy said, stop doing this. You would say, stop signing these orders right now.
Right now. Second, we've got to fix this backdoor search loophole in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act.
Unless an emergency?
Well, what this is this allows the government to look at the emails of law-abiding Americans. That needs to be fixed. And then I believe strongly we ought to ban all dragnet surveillance on law-abiding Americans, not just phone records, but also medical records, purchases, and others.
Why should I feel?
So yeah, there's Ron Wyden saying that what President Obama has proposed is a good first step, but then he's talking about some really important next steps. I think Chuck Todd didn't get what he was talking about, the program, the amendments to the FISA Act, or what's called the FISA Amendments Act. I made a couple videos on this. That's not the bulk phone record collection of metadata of phone calls made within the United States. It's phone calls made between Americans and people outside the United States, also emails, and that's not just metadata, that's actually content of emails, content of phone calls, as long as one side is outside the United States and the target isn't American. The way this has been changed, they can collect huge amounts of information and actual content, not just metadata. And so I was glad to see him bring that up. And then also going to other records besides phone records, that's Section 215 of the Patriot Act, that basically lets the government take all tangible things. That's how they're getting the phone records, but it could be medical records, library records, could be almost anything, and it doesn't require a judge to sign off on it based on probable cause, no warrant requirement. It's just sort of an internal executive branch decision. So I'm glad to see that Ron Wyden brought those things up. Also, I want to show Dianne Feinstein was over on CNN State of the Union. One thing, I showed her talking about the Ukraine with Candy Crowley, or Ukraine earlier with Candy Crowley. In the rebroadcast of State of the Union, that's the only clip of Dianne Feinstein they showed on CNN. They cut out everything she said about NSA spying, and also what she said about her conflict with the CIA over them possibly hacking Senate computers. I'm going to show you both those clips. First, here's a long response from Senator Dianne Feinstein, since she is the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee and has a lot to do with how these reforms are going to be implemented. Even she's been a big defender of NSA spying over the years, but I want to show her really, I think it's over 2 minutes, her response to Candy Crowley that they didn't show in the rebroadcast on CNN. And instead they showed a lot of stuff about the missing Malaysian airliner, which I'm not even covering on my show today. Anyway, here's Dianne Feinstein reacting to President Obama's proposal to limit bulk phone record collection over in this clip.
With you and how soon?
Well, let me comment on them. Mm-hmm. In the first place, the House has a bill it is passing to do some of that. The president has said he would send us a bill, and I hold him to this word because it's very important that we receive bill language as to exactly what the administration intends. Here is the issue. The issue is whether the telecoms, all of them, are willing to hold this data. When we talked with them, they were not. They would most likely have to be compelled legislatively in a bill which did so, and also offered liability protection, liability immunity when they participate in the program.
So if someone is spied on, they're not held liable for that?
That's correct. Right. So that's one thing. What the president is proposing is that data only be held for 18 months instead of 5 years. That is a good suggestion. That the hops, the number of, if I were the principal terrorist calling you in the United States, that's one hop. The hops be held to 2 as opposed to 3. That's a good suggestion. The question comes, can a bill be passed? It's very controversial. There are a lot of different views right now. Can people come together to pass a bill?
Where is
the program itself sunsets next year. So whether we take action right away, I think remains to be seen. I am open to that action. My concern has been, and let me state it very clearly, that if this is held by a large number of telecoms with their people doing the actual querying, is privacy as controlled as it is with 22 vetted people at the National Security Agency who are supervised and watched with everything they do here. The final element that I think is a positive element that would come into this is that there would be a court approval of every query. I happen to support that. I happen to think if it can be done on an emergency basis, because time is of the essence, that is helpful.
So yeah, that I think was definitely worth listening to, even though I disagree with Senator Dianne Feinstein on a lot of her support of NSA spying. She did talk about some of the important issues, and she also talked about the need for legislation to implement what President Obama is doing. And one of the interesting analyses of this issue I saw was over on Face the Nation. Bob Schieffer had on Mike Morrell, who used to be deputy director of the CIA and was also on the commission that made recommendations to President Obama on how to fix the problems with NSA spying. And one of their recommendations was to take the bulk phone record collection program out of the government's hands and keep those records with the phone companies. Mike Morrell and also Michael Hayden, who's a former national security, was he director of national intelligence? I can't remember his exact job. Anyway, they were both over on Face the Nation, and they said some interesting things, especially about the difference between what President Obama proposed and what's coming out of the House Intelligence Committee, the Republican-controlled House Intelligence Committee. First, I'll show Michael Morrell over in this clip.
Well, people know. So this is exactly what the review group recommended, which is that the government will no longer hold the data, and that anytime NSA wants to query that data, that they will require a court order. There is a competing proposal from the House Intelligence Committee, which is that the phone companies will also hold the data, but that court review will not happen before, it will happen later. I'm comfortable with that. I think we're headed in the right direction here, and I think there'll be some sort of compromise between the President's proposal, which again is consistent with the review group, and the House Intelligence Committee's proposal. They're very, very close to each other.
General,
So yeah, there was some an interesting contrast between what President Obama's proposed and what's in the House Intelligence Committee. But what was actually really scary about the differences between the two proposals came out when Bob Schieffer asked Michael Hayden, I think he's former director of the CIA, if I'm remembering his title. Maybe they'll show it during the clip, but he is actually saying, if you listen, that if what they go for is what the House Intelligence Committee is proposing, it would actually give the NSA some greater spying capabilities than the capabilities they have under the current program, as you can see over in this clip.
Michael suggests there's powerful convergence between what the President is suggesting and what the House Intelligence Committee is actually embodied in legislation.
Explain to me what difference
right.
does it make?
Now, here's what's happening, all right? NSA would get billing records on a daily basis from the American telecom providers. But over time, the percentage of overall billing records that NSA was retrieving got smaller and smaller. Michael Spano pointed out that they're only getting about a third, if that, just because of changes in technology. But NSA held them. And a lot of civil libertarians were concerned about that, not because that had been abused, but because of the potential for abuse. So what we get now is NSA doesn't hold it. The telephone companies hold it, but NSA gets to query the data, and here they get to query the data in an exhaustive way, not that 1/3 they formerly got. And beyond that, if you look at the language in the House bill, it actually talks about all communication. So in this sense, NSA is able to query not just telephone metadata, but digital or email metadata too. So I think we've arrived at a solution that actually makes us more safe, but gives people higher comfort that the government would not potentially abuse.
But how?
So yeah, what Michael Hayden, and they showed he was former NSA director, Michael Hayden was saying there is something I hadn't heard anywhere else, that First of all, that under the current system, they're only getting about a third of the phone records because of the way they do the record keeping. But if they were able to query all the records from the phone company, they'll now have access to the metadata from all the phone records. And they'll also have access to all the digital data. They'll be able to query all of it, the emails, and I assume that includes text messages, which will be metadata, won't be the content of emails and text messages, but it will be who is texting whom and what time it was and both locations, and you can get a lot of information even without the content if you have those just that metadata. So I thought that was kind of disturbing, and I didn't really hear that from anyone except for General Michael Hayden there. So I wanted to show you that. As long as we're on the subject of NSA spying, I also want to show you a clip of Oregon Senator Ron Wyden back over on Meet the Press. Chuck Todd asked him about Edward Snowden and amnesty for Edward Snowden, and he pretty much dodged the question. I was kind of disappointed that you can't really find an elected official who is going to come out in favor of amnesty for Edward Snowden. And then at the end of his answer, he said some things about that seemed to apply more to James Clapper. I'll talk about that a little more after I show you the clip. This is Democratic Senator Ron Wyden answering, or not answering, a question from Chuck Todd on NBC's Meet the Press about Edward Snowden's culpability here.
Raise this as well, saying it's a good first step. Where are you on Snowden? Is he a whistleblower? Is he a criminal? And if he's brought back to the United States, should charges be brought up against him?
Chuck, I decided a long time ago if somebody was charged criminally, I wasn't going to be just doing running commentary. But the bottom line is this is a debate that shouldn't have started that way. It should have been started with the intelligence leadership. But did he commit a crime? Did he commit a crime? I think that's something for lawyers.
You're in the United States Senate. You have this. You cannot tell me whether he committed a crime?
I'm not a prosecutor. I'm not a prosecutor, and I can tell you years ago when I was in the House, I asked the tobacco executives whether nicotine was addictive. They were under oath. They said no, and the prosecutor said they couldn't prove intent. Here's what the bottom line is for me. The American people deserve straight information from the intelligence leadership. If the American people don't get it, you can bet there'll be other situations like this.
Now, what was interesting about that answer is like the last two talking point, or the last two parts of his answer there didn't seem to be about Edward Snowden. They seemed to be more about James Clapper. Like he had these talking points all prepared to answer questions about Edward Snowden, but also about James Clapper, who is the Director of National Intelligence, I believe, is his title. And he was asked a question by Ron Wyden back in March of 2013, before the Edward Snowden leaks, and he seemed to basically lie to Congress. But it seems like Ron Wyden had this answer prepared for, did James Clapper lie to you, when he said that we weren't collecting information on millions of Americans. And I guess that thing about the tobacco executives who said that tobacco wasn't addictive, how they couldn't be prosecuted, that seemed like more an answer having to do with James Clapper than Edward Snowden. Also, the thing he said at the end about how we need straight answers from our intelligence community. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say James Clapper seemingly lied to Congress back in March 2013, I've played the clip several times, but I've loaded it up for one more playing. It's kind of one of the golden oldies we love to play on LiberalViewer Sunday live clip roundup. Here's Ron Wyden back in March 2013, before the Edward Snowden leaks, getting a member or a leader in the intelligence community to basically lie to Congress, although whether it's criminally culpable is a more difficult legal question, but you can decide for yourself after you see the clip here.
Last summer, the NSA director was at a conference, and he was asked a question about the NSA surveillance of Americans. He replied, and I quote here, "The story that we have millions or hundreds of millions of dossiers on people is completely false." The reason I'm asking the question is, having served on the committee now for a dozen years, I don't really know what a dossier is in this context. So what I wanted to see is if you could give me a yes or no answer to the question, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
What I love about that clip, as I always say, is the way he's like rubbing his head there. It's like the worst tell. I think if you played poker with him, you could tell when he was bluffing because, I don't know, maybe he just always rubs his head. I don't know James Clapper that well, but I think that is more what Ron Wyden was giving an answer for that question when Chuck Todd asked him whether Edward Snowden deserved amnesty, but then Chuck Todd did go on to ask him about James Clapper, and he didn't use those other talking points, but Chuck Todd was also asking him if there were things that he knew about that the public didn't know about yet, and I'll talk about that a little more after I show the question and answer. This is, again, Ron Wyden this morning on Meet the Press answering questions from NBC's Chuck Todd here.
Like this.
You were the first one. You made public what you did there with James Clapper. There's some people that thought Clapper should have been brought up on some charges because that he technically lied under oath to Congress. He used some weasel words. It took him a while to apologize for those comments. You had to bring this up. Is there anything else that we don't know, that you know, that would somehow make the American public feel insecure about their privacy?
First of all, I believe that we can make sure that liberty and security are not mutually exclusive. We can have both. That's what Ben Franklin
Right, but is there anything else out there that we don't know about that would actually be violating our privacy?
We certainly need to make those reforms that I just outlined. What was particularly troubling about what James Clapper did is he wouldn't even correct it after the fact. In other words, this issue had been put in the public square, not by the Congress, but by, in effect, the intelligence leadership. They stated something in a public hearing that was flagrantly inaccurate. They wouldn't correct it after the fact.
You still have confidence in Clapper?
I think that we need an upgrade in the intelligence leadership. I will tell you that the new man who's been nominated for the NSA, Admiral Rogers, he understands they have a big rebuilding job to do.
Senator Ron Wyden.
So yeah, I guess if the answer to the question, do you still have confidence in James Clapper, is we need an upgrade in our intelligence leadership, I think that means no. The answer is no. And speaking of fights between members of Congress and the intelligence community, I want to show one more clip from Dianne Feinstein. This again didn't make it to the rebroadcast of CNN's State of the Union. It was only on the first broadcast this morning, and I'm glad I went back to look at the full Dianne Feinstein interview so I could get to this answer that she gave to Candy Crowley, talking about this fight she's having with the CIA about the Senate Intelligence Committee was putting together a report about whether the CIA was involved in torture during the Bush administration, basically with all the anti-terrorist enhanced interrogation techniques and all that stuff. The Senate Intelligence Committee was putting together a report on it, and apparently the CIA, who was being investigated, hacked the computers of the Senate committee investigating the CIA. And Dianne Feinstein made this big long speech on the Senate floor, and she didn't really add that much to it, but she did answer sort of a question and summarize it over on CNN State of the Union with Candy Crowley over in this clip.
Topics we want to get to, and that is, first of all, what is the state of play in your dispute with the Central Intelligence Agency, which you think went into a Senate computer that was provided by the CIA in a safe location? You believe they took things out of it regarding your investigation into torture by the CIA.
Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but I have done no press after I made a 40-minute speech on the floor. The speech was carefully put together. I believe it's accurate, and I believe those words should stand. The problem is that the CIA went into walled-off Senate computers in a bona fide investigation that's being done of the detention and interrogation of detainees. Having said that, that's a problem. And it isn't the first time. It's actually the third time. So this is a serious issue. I have asked for an apology and a statement that it would never happen again. I've not received that to this day. That's of concern to me, and I'd really like to leave it at that.
And she pretty much did leave it at that. Candy Crowley asked her, is she like not on speaking terms with the CIA? And she said that no, she does still talk to them, but she didn't really say anything more about that situation or her fight with the CIA, other than basically what she said right there. So anyway, those are the NSA spying and related clips I wanted to show you this morning. And I did want to show you a few clips on the Chris Christie Bridgegate scandal. There was some news that broke in the last few days on that topic. Basically, Chris Christie hired this law firm, one of the biggest, most respected law firms in the country, Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, to investigate himself. And he was the client, so they were doing the investigation for him. So it's kind of like that he cleared himself, or the people he hired to clear him cleared him, although I guess it was actually paid for by the taxpayers in New Jersey, this report. First I want to show you one more. This is from last night's Saturday Night Live. This is the new this is the replacement for Seth Meyers. Colin Jost covered the Chris Christie report released. You can see that, and I'll show you that clip here.
A report on the Bridgegate scandal, which was compiled by a team picked by New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, was released Thursday and clears the governor of any wrongdoing. And you can totally trust it because it was fact-checked by independent investigator Trish Christie.
So yeah, I think that kind of summarizes the problem with this report that came out, that it basically was a self-investigation, and it didn't even give out all the transcripts of the interviews, and it didn't interview everyone because there are a few people who aren't going to talk. They're waiting to see if they, the people who there's actual evidence that they engaged in wrongdoing aren't going to talk unless they get immunity. There are two investigations that are still ongoing other than Chris Christie's self-investigation. There's the legislative investigation with the New Jersey Senate and Assembly are investigating, and then there's a federal criminal investigation the U.S. Attorney's Office is investigating. So those will be the two important investigations. And on the first one, the legislative investigation, both the head of that investigation from the Assembly was on one show, and then the Senate, the head of the New Jersey Senate investigation, they have like a joint committee. Here's Assembly member John Wisniewski was over on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, and George Stephanopoulos asked him if, since Christie's own report vindicated him, does he have any evidence to show any different? And he doesn't have any evidence, but he also talked about some of the limits of the evidence that's come out so far that I'll talk about a little more after I show that clip here.
A bit of evidence that showed that Governor Christie either knew about this slowdown or authorized it.
Well, we haven't had a chance to talk to some of the key players, as this report has not either. Bridget Kelly, who sent the email that said time for traffic in Fort Lee. We don't know why she sent that. We don't know who authorized her to send that. It's hard to believe, understanding how this governor's office works, that one morning she woke up and decided, I think it'd be a great idea to cause
traffic. But you have
traffic.
not, to be clear, though, you have not found any evidence yet.
We have not found any evidence, and we're not finished.
You're not.
So yeah, there's John Wisniewski, the Assembly member, over on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, saying that there are people they still haven't talked to. And so, and the other thing I want to show from, let me make sure I get the right clip here. Also from This Week with George Stephanopoulos, the partner at that big law firm I was talking about, Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, Randy Mastro, who's kind of the author of this report. If you want to know whether this was an independent report or was a spin job in favor of Chris Christie, I think all you need to do is watch how the guy from the law firm was definitely spinning. And I think he was definitely spinning in favor of Chris Christie, as I will explain after I show the clip of him. He was also on, like I said, over on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, answering a question from George Stephanopoulos over in this clip.
Well, George, we looked at over 250,000 pages of documents, interviewed more than 70 witnesses, and as Mr. Wisniewski just admitted, we haven't seen a shred of evidence that the governor knew anything about this lane realignment decision beforehand. If it were there in the hard evidence, we would have seen it. They've got all the documents responsive to our subpoena relating to the George Washington Bridge incident. They have the same information that we have. And Mr. Wisniewski and his committee have been at this for 5 months. How do you respond to this charge?
I'm sorry about the audio problems there, but that was actually in the original broadcast, and you can go watch the entire interview at a link down in the video description. What made me so sure that he was spinning for Chris Christie was the label that he used to talk about what happened. Do you hear he called it a lane realignment decision instead of like a bridge closure or a traffic jam? That's like, having worked as a lawyer myself for several years, one of the things they teach you is to choose the labels in your arguments very carefully to do some work for you, spinning, and they do this in politics, obviously, as well. And for Randy Mastro there to call it a lane realignment decision just shows me that he spent a significant amount of time trying to figure out how to spin this best for New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. And I also want to show one more clip of Randy Mastro. I think there's still a little bit of an audio problem in the original. One of the things and he's responding to one of the biggest criticisms of this report, other than that they didn't talk to people like Bridget Kelly, but Bridget Kelly's put out a statement through her attorneys really criticizing this report because it was a big attack on her. She was cast as like the main villain, and it attacked her personally, saying that she often looked like she was crying or upset, and that she had just been jilted by one of the other players. And I'll show you her statement and how Randy Mastro responded to her criticisms over on This Week with George Stephanopoulos in this clip.
On your report. Here's what it says. It says, this report's venomous, gratuitous, and inappropriate sexist remarks concerning Ms. Kelly have no place in what is alleged to be a professional and independent report. The only credible investigation into the lane closings is being conducted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. If Ms. Kelly were provided with the appropriate procedural safeguards, she will be fully cooperative. And she's not alone in saying that, including some of these details about her personal life, describing her as emotional, was sexist and gratuitous. Your response? I'm glad you asked, because we treated both David Wildstein and Bridget Kelly exactly the same. They deserved the assessment that we gave both of them about their personal conduct and about their actions exactly the same way, because they violated the public trust, and that's what the evidence showed, George. All of it relevant to not only their consciousness of guilt, but their culpability. And in Bridget Kelly's case, if I may say, Bridget Kelly not only sent the email that showed ulterior motive, time for some traffic problems. What is that ulterior motive? Yes. Well, George, I'm glad you asked that too, because we say what we know and what we don't know. We can't establish what the ulterior motive is because we didn't have the chance to question Kelly and Wildstein. But George, it's obvious there was one to target Fort Lee and the mayor of Fort Lee because of Bridget Kelly and Wildstein's exchanges. And if I just may say this, George, Bridget Kelly not only sent the email that said, time for some traffic problems in Fort Lee, she then, after the fact, when the governor sent his chief of staff to find out whether she knew about this beforehand, she called a subordinate that night and asked her to destroy incriminating evidence. Bridget Kelly is at the heart of the problem here. So is David Wildstein, and they were both treated exactly as they should have been in our report. They abused the public trust, and they should be held accountable. Final.
So I guess that's like even more than throwing somebody under the bus. They threw Bridget Kelly under the bus there and backed over her several times, as well as David Wildstein. But that guy Randy Mastro, I don't know. I think he reminds me as to why I never wanted to work for those big law firms like Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher. And on that whole sexism charge, you can see I said I was going to have a clip from the lead Senate investigator, or the lead New Jersey senator investigating Chris Christie. Her name is, I think, Loretta Weinberg. Do I have that right? Yeah. Loretta Weinberg talked a little bit about the attack on Bridget Kelly and the personal attack in the report that Chris Christie's self-investigation released, and I'll talk about that a little more after. This is, I believe this was over on NBC's Meet the Press here.
For a report that was supposed to be so conclusive, footnoted, etc., how did they know who broke up a personal relationship? That gratuitous, sexist language in that report is infuriating, and anybody who put their name on that report should be ashamed of themselves.
I guess I want to.
So I kind of like how the New Jersey state senator there not only attacked Chris Christie, but also attacked Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher and all the people who put their names on the report. So I kind of feel that way myself. I mean, I don't know about the substance there, but just this report seems like a lot of spin to me, and I don't know why it was paid for by the taxpayers of New Jersey. But anyway, those are the clips I want to show on Bridgegate. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I have just a few more clips on a few different topics I want to show. First, I want to show, having just talked about Chris Christie, one of the things he did, along with some other governors who are hoping to run for president in 2016, is he went to Las Vegas to meet with some big Republican donors, including Sheldon Adelstein. And I want to show first a clip just so you can see pictures of all the Republican governors who went to try to talk to this guy, and they'll describe a little bit about how he spent his money in the last elections. This is, there's no newsmaker here. This is actually George Stephanopoulos talking to his panel, to Democratic consultant Donna, Brazile. I just wanted to show it because of the big money involved on the Republican side that I'll talk about a little more after I show the clip here.
A billionaire, one of the richest men in America, has a confab out in Las Vegas this weekend. All of the governors looking for it, including Chris Christie, going out there. He delivered $93 million to super PACs last year, probably spent a lot more on the side. This is a danger to Democrats, isn't it?
Oh, look, Sheldon Adelson put a lot of money behind a lot of losing candidates, Newt Gingrich, Mitt Romney, etc. He's looking for a winner. That's why the doors are now opening to Jeb Bush. The real energy on the Republican side, I only know this because I travel in some Tea Party circles, is Rand Paul. I mean, Rand Paul is the talk of the town. He's the one going on campuses out west at UC Berkeley, going to Howard University, visiting historical black colleges and universities. He's trying to open up a dialogue within the Republican Party. Nobody wants to talk about him, but he has a network in all 50 states, so that's the game change on the Republican side.
So yeah, that was an interesting sort of detour to the question there from Donna Brazile about Rand Paul possibly being the Republican favorite, which I don't know. I think he may be one of the he may be the Tea Party candidate fighting an establishment candidate. But they're talking about there with Sheldon Adelson. Did I call him Adelstein? It's Sheldon Adelson out in Las Vegas. Those were the candidates who are probably going to be the establishment candidate. Although I did like what Donna Brazile said there about how Sheldon Adelson's money didn't actually buy him much in terms of victories. Also, Chris Christie got in a little bit of trouble when he was in Las Vegas. He said something about, he was talking about being in Israel, and he talked about flying over the occupied territories, which of course is a big no-no when you're talking to Republicans, and especially Sheldon Adelson, who the reason he gave all that money to Newt Gingrich and then to Mitt Romney in the 2012 elections is he is a big supporter of Israel, and especially a big supporter of Israel against Iran. But and so Chris Christie had to backtrack about saying occupied territories when of course Republicans don't believe in occupied territories. That was kind of an amusing aspect of that whole story. But also on the subject of the 2016 presidential election, I showed Mike Rogers there, and I kind of made fun of Mike Rogers last week, and I even took a little excerpt out of LiberalViewer Sunday Live clip roundup where I made fun of him attacking Edward Snowden for being a Russian spy, but then not having any evidence that Edward Snowden was a Russian spy. Well, I guess Mike Rogers announced this last week that he's retiring from Congress at the end of his current term, even though he's chair of the House Intelligence Committee, which is kind of a big, powerful job. And some people think he may be revamping himself for a different kind of political run. And Chris Wallace asked him about that. I mean, what he says he's doing is he's going to have a radio talk show, believe it or not. So Chris Wallace asked him about that, and of course brought in, and you can't go 1 week without some sort of reference to Ronald Reagan, and so I'll show that and talk about it a little more after I show the clip here.
I noticed when you were talking about the conversation, you talked about New Hampshire and Iowa just as random states. And, you know, Ronald Reagan, back in 1980, I don't have to tell you, used his platform as a radio commentator to run for president. So is that a consideration for you, or you were prepared at this point to rule out any interest in 2016?
Wow, Ronald Reagan used his platform on radio to run for president of the United States? I had no idea, Chris.
So, so what are you saying? That, I mean, you're thinking of this?
No, listen, I'm going to take it where it goes. This is a very unique opportunity that I will be able to talk about issues in ways that you don't hear on a national radio platform today, about the importance of national security, foreign policy, and all of the issues facing America. And, you know, to have that intimate conversation with listeners was very appealing to me all across the United States. My goal here is to be as engaging as I can and to get listeners' opinion. And if I can move the needle on the debate, there's a lot of celebrity politicians that are using issues candidly in Washington, D.C. today that are detrimental to the national security of the United States, and the politics in Washington has gotten as small as I've ever seen it.
Well, I'm just going to ask you...
So, I don't know, that sounded sort of like a positive answer, that maybe he is thinking of running for president, or maybe he's going to try to run for something in Michigan, I don't know, to, like, as a stepping stone to running for president, I don't know, but it doesn't seem like radio talk show host, as a former FBI agent, former chair of the House Intelligence Committee, that his, like, ultimate goal is to be radio talk show host. I find that a little bit difficult to believe, speaking of upcoming election politics, over on Fox News Sunday, they also did this big segment on Obamacare, trying to spin it in the most negative way possible, even though it looks like they've signed up, Obamacare signed up over 6 million people, as the deadline for open enrollment is coming tomorrow. March 31st is the deadline for open enrollment, but there's been kind of a surge at the end, which over on Fox News Sunday they tried to spin as negatively as possible and teed it up for a big long answer from a Republican senator, or not a long answer, but a big negative answer from a Republican Senator John Barasso, also a doctor, as they pointed out on Fox News Sunday. And you can see that over in this clip.
Doctor. Well, the White House announced this week more than 6 million people now total have signed up for private health insurance on the exchanges, including 1.8 million so far just in March. But they still have no numbers for how many people have paid for coverage, how many so-called young invincibles have signed up, nor how many people have signed up who were previously uninsured. Senator Barasso, given that, how much does this 6 million number actually mean?
I don't think it means anything, Chris. I think they're cooking the books on this. People want to know the answers to that. They also want to know is, once all this is said and done, what kind of insurance will those people actually have? Will they be able to keep the doctor that they want? How much more is it going to cost them? And we know that some of the best cancer hospitals in the country want very little to do with people that actually buy this insurance on the Obamacare exchanges.
So yeah, that seemed almost like collusion there between Fox News and the Republican guest, in the way that Chris Wallace, the supposedly straight news anchor there, teed up the question for him with all those criticisms of the Obama numbers. But then he had the other senator he had on isn't technically a Democrat. It's Angus King from Maine, who's an independent, but he caucuses with the Democrats, so he's definitely, I mean, it wouldn't be unfair to sort of cast him as in the Democratic role here. And you can see, however, that when Chris Wallace asks him a question, it's basically the same question he's asking the Republican. You know, and both questions are criticisms of the Obama administration's numbers. And what was really amusing is that Chris Wallace, this is actually the next clip that goes right after the clip I showed you, and Angus King tried to break in and give his own answer refuting what Senator John Barasso was saying there, and Chris Wallace wouldn't let him and had to make sure that he framed the question first in terms of criticizing the Obama administration, as you can see when I show you that clip right here.
Let's stick. Wait. Let me ask a question first, Senator, and then I'm gonna bring you in on exactly that issue, because while the White House is not offering numbers on some of those internal issues, their insurance companies and some private studies have offered some numbers, and let's put those up on the screen. The administration said they needed 38% of the risk pool to be young, healthy people. So far, it looks like they're only a quarter of the enrollees. Studies have found only 27% of those who've signed up were previously uninsured, and up to 23% of the 6 million figure haven't paid yet. Senator King, aren't those big holes in this 6 million number that the administration is touting?
Well, in the first place, I checked the numbers this morning. It's now 6,563,000, 6.5 million just in the last few days. There were 500,000 people on the call centers on Friday and 1.5 million on the website. And those numbers don't come from the White House. There's a wonderful website, acasignups.net, private website by a guy named Charles Gaba, who's collecting data from all across the country. So there really is a huge surge. Number two, the president of WellPoint, which is one of the big national insurance companies, said a couple of weeks ago that the sign-ups are getting younger by the day. In other words, younger people, not surprisingly, are the last people to sign up. I suspect that's who's signing up today and tomorrow. And so I think the data is making a lot of difference. As far as how many people have actually paid, the numbers are going up on that.
If I can just ask you, though, but what about the number that are uninsured, which seems to be about a quarter, and what about the number that haven't paid, which is also about a quarter?
Well, the McKinsey & Company did that 25% uninsured. The only real numbers we have are from New York and Kentucky. In Kentucky, it's 75% of the people signing up were previously uninsured. In New York, 59%. So those numbers are going to sort themselves out over time. But, you know, there's no denying it. They're probably going to make that 7 million target, which was set, you know, a couple of years ago. Nobody, 2 months ago, if you'd have asked me, I'd have said there's no chance because the rollout was so bungled.
All right.
Wow, so Senator Angus King there did a pretty good job of refuting all the setup from Fox News on how Obamacare was going to be a disaster. And that actually sounded pretty optimistic, like the numbers are going to be better than a lot of people have been worrying about, and even the distribution of people who sign up. And if that's true, it could really help with some of the fears about the 2014 election. And I want to show one more clip on this. This is someone who I'd never seen before. He's mayor of Ithaca. His name is Svante Myrick. He was over on, let's see, I believe he was on Meet the Press in their roundtable, and they were pretty much all saying that Obamacare was going to be a drag on Democrats, and they were talking about this Nate Silver prediction that I showed last Sunday about a 60% chance that the Republicans are going to take the Senate. And he had an argument saying that Obamacare wasn't going to be that big an issue. That sort of goes along with what Angus King was saying there. I'll talk about that a little more after I show that clip here.
Absolutely. To me, it's the future. It's always, elections are always about the future. And Obamacare and the debate over it is increasingly going to become the past. I mean, 6 months from now, when folks are insured, and we've got folks getting insured all over the country, they're going to be thinking about, yes, those potholes, but who's going to create jobs? Who's going to help my kid go to college? Who's going to help us build a better country? And if the Republicans continue to talk about the past, I don't think they're going to be successful.
Well, we shall.
So I don't know. I think Obamacare is going to be a drag, possibly at the election. All year I've been saying that I think it's going to turn around, and maybe the numbers are going to turn around. But it's just I don't think it's tough to see, even with all the good numbers coming in, that the bad reputation of Obamacare is going to be completely rehabilitated between now, the end of March, and the election at the beginning of November. That's just because it was a punchline for so long, but especially low information voters are not going to really know that much about it. And it's also an off-year election, which favors the Republicans, and unless there's something that really gets Democrats to turn out, and that's kind of what the kind of issues that Democratic mayor of Ithaca was kind of hinting at there. I don't know how likely that is, but I don't know. It's an optimistic thing to think about. I just don't know. I don't think it's that likely. Speaking of futuristic visions, I also want to show a very quick clip from the CEO of Apple. Tim Cook was over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. He was interviewed by journalist or reporter, ABC reporter David Muir, and I guess this interview was shown earlier in the week, I think maybe on Good Morning America or one of the other ABC news programs, and they showed a little clip on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos this morning as part of this larger story about whether manufacturing was coming back in the United States. But I'm an iPhone user, and I just wanted to show this clip, especially because there's something at the very end. I listened to it a whole bunch of times, and I can't figure out what Tim Cook said. Maybe you can help me after I show you the clip. That kind of stands by itself as a topic. But anyway, I'll show you the clip and talk about it a little more here.
Created at Apple. CEO Tim Cook recently announcing in a tweet, "We've begun manufacturing the Mac Pro in Austin, Texas."
How big of a deal is that to you?
It's a big deal, but we think we can do more. We also announced a huge investment in Arizona. We haven't said what it's for.
Is it the Sapphire glass?
It's the Sapphire announcement, and that's sort of all I'll say about it.
When does that glass come off the line?
I can't tell you that.
For bigger iPhone screens?
I can't tell you that either.
An iWatch?
It's for Ring.
You heard it here first.
So I could not figure out what Tim Cook said there between David Muir saying iWatch and you heard it here first. The last thing Tim Cook said there, I don't know what it was, but it was kind of interesting. What they were talking about is that there's this Sapphire plant in Arizona where supposedly Apple is manufacturing this new bigger glass composite screen for the new iPhone 6 that supposedly is going to have a larger screen to compete with the Samsung Galaxy. I don't know how many of you think that's important, but I just thought that was an interesting clip. I thought I'd play here near the end. There are two more quick clips I want to play on the Hobby Lobby case, which even though that was up for oral arguments in the Supreme Court this last week, I didn't see much coverage on the Sunday shows. They did talk about it a little bit over on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher on Friday, although I noticed Bill Maher made a little mistake that I'll talk about a little bit, and then about the more of the substantive point he's making after I show the clip here.
Hobby Lobby apparently is run by conservative Christians, and they want to be exempt from the provision in Obamacare that says the employers, if you have employer-based insurance, have to cover contraception, because that's evil. And it's funny because the Supreme Court seems to, in the hearings they had today, seems to have split along gender lines. You know, the three women on the court seem to be all okay with this. And the 6 men are asking stupid, inappropriate questions, like Roberts asked, well, could this lead to corporations having to fund abortions? Yes, it's going to lead to, bring your aborted daughter to work day.
So yeah, I don't know about bring your aborted daughter to work day, but he quoted the wrong justice there. The justice that actually asked if this law could theoretically lead to corporations having to pay for abortions. That wasn't Roberts, it was Kennedy, and he's the swing vote. And the abortion issue is kind of weird in the Hobby Lobby case, and as I've talked about, and I talked about last week, I'm working on a video that's called Obamacare Forces Corporate Abortions, about the Hobby Lobby case. I didn't quite finish it this week, but I'm about halfway done. I think I'll most likely get it up this week. The video is going to be criticizing a segment over on Fox News that was the day before the Hobby Lobby arguments, where it's actually from the Kelly file. Megyn Kelly is a lawyer, and she had on another lawyer, Judge Andrew Napolitano, who I know a lot of my viewers are actually a fan of his because he's libertarian, and sometimes he says things I agree with, but Bill Maher was making fun of the whole possibility, the hypothetical abortion issue. Well, I'm going to show you a final clip. This is from last week's the Kelly file. I think was it Monday or Tuesday, I believe, the night before the Hobby Lobby oral arguments, giving like huge amounts of misinformation about what the case is about in this clip.
What's this all about? Hobby Lobby.
Well, there are two cases, one from Philadelphia, one from the Third Circuit, one from Denver, the 10th Circuit, and each went the other way. And they have to do with whether or not the government can force corporations to pay for contraceptive services for their employees. As everybody knows, the Affordable Care Act requires anybody that employs 50 or more people to provide health care for them that includes contraceptive services. Mm-hmm. Contraceptive services means contraception, euthanasia, and abortion.
Contraception means abortion and euthanasia. Now both those are, I don't know even where he came up with those, but that's like totally wrong. And so I'm going to make this video, Obamacare Forces Corporate Abortions. Look for that coming up this week. I'm way over time. I want to go look in the comments. I noticed I had like 80, 90 people watching, so I want to honor that and see what I can find in the comment section. But I'm like really late for dinner here, so I noticed that Representative Press was in the audience and was giving me trouble for not talking about clearly enough about the occupied territories being occupied territories. I don't know exactly what it was I said that wasn't clear enough about that, but I thought I was making fun of the Republicans for not being able to call them occupied territories. So I'm not sure where I didn't go far enough on that, but I'm sorry, I'll scroll through, see if I can find there are all these. It seems it's really hard to get to the comments that are on topic that aren't like people arguing with each other. I did see that along the way here, but let me see here, because I really got to finish up. Oh, here it is. Of course, it's an insane Zionist lie. Don't believe it is a fact, is it not? Can you say that? Well, I mean, it's a diplomatic controversy that, there are definitely occupied territories. It's U.S. policy, it's Israeli policy to have a two-state solution. So if you believe in a two-state solution, then one of those states is currently occupied, right? So I don't know how much clearer I can be than that, but I'm not sure how I got that wrong, but okay. I hear like my dinner coming in the door here, but I'm going to look for one or two more quick. Let's see. NO8549 says, yay, Angus. Yeah, I thought that Angus King did a pretty good job in Fox News. Although one thing I wanted to point out about that is the comment I showed, that was kind of in the middle of the segment. They let John Barasso go first. They let him go last. They let him go longer. It was, as usual, you can find the whole segment down by clicking on a link in the video description, and I recommend everyone check that out. Let me see if I can get one more comment here. Tim Cook, it's a ring. Oh, is that what he said? It's a ring, maybe? Yeah, a ring, because I heard that the iWatch is supposedly like a circular glass ring, or it like I don't know what that's about, but okay, maybe he did say it's a ring. I guess that would make sense. So anyway, thanks for helping figure out what that was all about. Like I said, I think I'm at like an hour, and how long have I been broadcasting here? Like almost an hour and 15 minutes, and I gotta deal with this whole dinner thing. So thank you all for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the clips I picked out. I hope they left you more informed for your coming week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend for my viewers here in my time zone, the United States, Canada, and places to the south as well, and for my viewers in Europe and Australia and New Zealand and everywhere else around the world, I hope you enjoy the beginning of your week, and I guess I'll be seeing you all around the internet.